Words of Conviction was a series investigating a new junk science called 911 call analysis. We found it became pervasive across the justice system, and we were reporting on the different institutions, agencies, from prosecutors to the FBI to the courts that had promoted and enabled it. And we also reported on the people who it had been used against unwittingly. Yeah, so there were several ethical challenge so there were several ethical challenges that we came across in reporting the story. Um, First and foremost, given the sensitivity of what we were reporting on, was the framework. So we were writing about really kind of harrowing, often traumatic experiences for people, specifically cases in which people had died, children had died, and there was somebody accused of killing that person. And we had to write about these cases after the facts, often writing about the defendant or the suspect or the accused. And we had to really kind of thread a needle and stick to the evidence that we had in front of us in order to portray those people accurately while also remaining conscientious of the fact that somebody had died, somebody had been hurt, but somebody had also been accused of causing that harm. And then we were, at the end of the day, writing about how this 911 call analysis had been used against them. Often we were approaching people who didn't even know how this evidence had been leveraged against them. So we were informing a lot of people about it. So that was another kind of ethical tightrope to walk. Likewise, we were gathering a lot of 911 audio. We were gathering tapes of people's worst moments. There is kind of nothing more traumatic for a lot of people than finding a loved one and then having to call and report it right away. So internally, we had to decide, what's the most sensitive and fair way to present that 911 audio. Do we need people's permission? Do we need to tell them ahead of time? How does it fit into their larger story? We have to keep audience in mind. How do we be respectful, conscientious of our audience, of people listening? All those questions kind of came to the forefront. At the same time, there were smaller sort of day-to-day considerations. We had some sources who told us critical things about specific cases. For example, there was a juror who told us that she voted to convict a woman of murder, even though she didn't think that the woman had actually committed murder. Then afterwards, she wanted that interview stricken. She didn't want us to use it. So there were sort of day-to-day considerations like that, ethical considerations throughout the reporting. Since we've been publishing, there's sort of been an outpouring of emails and phone calls from people across the justice system. Academics, psychologists are using our reporting to teach, to conduct new studies on the validity of 911 call analysis, on the validity of detection deception. Likewise, we've had prosecutors, defense attorneys, even judges telling us that they're warning their own people, their own prosecutors, looking for cases in their own jurisdictions. There have been calls to ban it, calls from national associations of defense attorneys, as well as associations of prosecutors who are interested in evidence-based prosecutions, fair and accurate prosecutions. Likewise, there have been calls from those same groups for conviction reviews inside of district attorneys' offices that we reported on, where they're basically asking a fundamental question: has 911 call analysis been used to convict people in your jurisdiction, and are those convictions worth another look? More acutely, there was one case we wrote about, the case of Jessica Logan. She was a mother who was accused and convicted of killing her baby in 2019. She had her 911 call analyzed, and the detective who analyzed it testified to his analysis at court. Since we reported on the story, the state Supreme Court has agreed to take another look at the case, and attorneys from the Center for Forensic Science, as well as the Exoneration Project, have offered to represent her in her appeals. The outcome of that case is still up in the air, but altogether, folks from the legal community and the scientific community have sort of said in unison that they don't believe this should be used in the justice system, either as an investigative tool or as evidence in a trial, and they're taking steps to address it in actual cases. The value of this kind of journalism, I think, is to help people better understand some of their own preconceptions around the justice system. Uh, in popular culture, there's a lot of weight given to what people think of as forensic sciences, what people think of as evidence, the easy binaries of innocent and guilty. Our reporting, as lots of other reporters have addressed in previous stories, calls into questions a lot of those assumptions, a lot of those misconceptions. We think it's very easy often to read people, to kind of attach ourselves to this idea that truth and innocence, truth, deception and guilt can all be divined if you have the right training, because police departments choose to use it, because it's popularized in movies or TV shows, because maybe even some judges have allowed it, some state agencies have accredited it. All of these things we ran across in the reporting, and we had the expectation that somebody was asking basic questions about it, about the research behind it, about the validity of this new type of evidence. But we found kind of again and again that there was no real vetting process at any level, at the local, state, or federal level. And instead, those folks in the justice system who I would expect to have kind of enacted some safeguards, some guardrails, weren't really doing any of that. They weren't asking those questions. So I think our reporting asked some of those more basic questions, and I hope answered a lot of them too.